31-year-old man who admitted to killing victims in his apartment, then dismembering their bodies, may have murdered up to 17 people.
A serial killer is on the loose in the Daytona area.
Investigators are on the trail of a possible serial killer.
A stunning claim from an accused killer awaiting trial in Pennsylvania.
And authorities believe they could very well have a serial killer in custody.
And they say it may be the work of a serial killer.
An accused serial killer.
Welcome to 5 Minutes of Murder, the segment where I, Danny Longlegs, gets a chance to bring you on an adventure to explore the mind of a serial killer and to get a better look at what it is that makes some of these real-life monsters tick. On tonight's episode, we have a doozy for you. Ripped right out of the pages of the news, I present to you a man who in fact may be now the most prolific serial killer in the history of the United States, to the tune of no less than 90 murders. So without delay, tonight, I give to you Samuel Little.
If you didn't know him, he was a standard older gentleman, crystal clear blue eyes. However, when he started speaking to you about what he had done, those eyes looked right through you. And that was the first key. That was our impression of this guy is he's a killer. And the reason behind that is because when he would start remembering what he did and the descriptions he would give us, you totally saw him just blink out.
Samuel Little was born June 7th, 1940 in Reynolds, Georgia. His mother was a prostitute, so he was sent at the time to Lorain, Ohio, to be raised by his grandmother. He attended Hawthorne Junior High School, where from moment one he had problems with discipline and everything else. By his teen years, he found himself being arrested several times, leading him to be held in an institution for juvenile offenders. Then in the late 1960s, his family moved to Florida, where he began working as an ambulance attendant and a cemetery worker. But Little spent most of his time on the streets, engaging in robbery, petty theft, and making a living basically doing that kind of stuff. It was then he also began to travel around the country a lot. By 1975, he had been arrested 26 times in 11 different states for crimes including theft, assault, attempted rape, fraud, and attacks on government officials. Then, in 1982, Little was arrested in Pascagoula, Mississippi, and charged with the murder of a 22-year-old prostitute by the name of Melinda Lee Puri, but without enough evidence, the grand jury declined to indict Little for her murder. Shortly after that, Little was rearrested. And this time, he was charged with a second murder, that of a 26-year-old Patricia Mount. It was then he was transferred to Florida. This time, due to the mistrust of the witnesses' testimonies, Little was once again acquitted on January 1984. Then, in 1984, soon after in October, he moved to San Diego, California. Once living there a little while, he was then again arrested, this time, however, for kidnapping and beating and strangling Laura Burrows, who was a 22-year-old woman who survived the attack, but she was unable to positively match Little, so once again he was released. Then 1 month later, he was found again by police, but this time passed out in his car in the back seat with an unconscious woman who was also beaten and strangled, and in the same location of the attempted murder on Burrows. Once more, Little was arrested, but served only 2.5 years in prison for both of these crimes. Upon his release in February 1987, he immediately moved back to Los Angeles and committed an area of upwards of 10 more murders. Little was finally arrested on September 5, 2012 at a homeless shelter in Louisville, Kentucky. It was then that authorities used DNA testing, this new testing, to establish that he was involved with the murder of at least 3 more victims, Carol Elford, Guadalupe Avocat, and Audrey Nelson. All of the 3 women were killed and left in the same street lots in Los Angeles. He was extradited to Los Angeles, California, where he was charged formally on January 7th, 2013. There he was put on trial for the murders of Elford, Nelson, and Avocat, which basically the whole court system started on September 2014. This was where the first-time prosecutors would present the DNA of the courts, showing all the testing and all the testimonies of this numerous witnesses that ID'd him. A few short days later, on September 25th, Little was found guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison at California State Prison in Los Angeles County. One sentence, he was sentenced without the possibility of parole. Now this is where Samuel Little's story gets very, very interesting, because between September 2014 and 2018, while serving his sentence out, many different police departments made contact with Little about other cases that were going on in their departments. Then sometime between November 9th, 2018 and November 27th, for no real apparent reason, Samuel Little would confess in very great detail to an additional 80+ murders, pleading guilty to them all. In addition to his very detailed confessions, Samuel would provide numerous detailed sketches and paintings of each one of the victims as he remembered them in his imagination. The images were etched in his mind like photos, each one more haunting than the next. He didn't know most of their names, but he knew what they looked like, he knew what they were wearing, he knew how they were murdered, where they were disposed of, how old they were, and he even had an approximate time frame when each one of these people were murdered. In the end, Little had confessed to an estimated 90 murders across 14 states between 1970 and 2013, making Samuel Little close to, if not the most prolific serial killer in the history of the United States. To this date, many of the 90 assumed dead have already been identified by the FBI and other law enforcement agents, most of which harken back to decade-old unsolved cold cases. Right now, as it stands, now more than 36 already cleared cases, thanks to Little's information, have been processed.
Law enforcement authorities were able to close these cases out, get him to detail these horrible crimes that he committed.
But keep in mind, with the sheer number of victims, 90+, there's a lot more work to be done before we'll know the exact number of how many Little got. Well, Little was asked why he chose to kill, and why these same type of victims he kept coming back to. He referred back to basically his past, when the road was his home, and the back alleys and dive bars of these countries basically offered him a home, and basically offered him a feast, if you will, of what he referred to as low-hanging fruit. Women whose eyes were already half dead. Women who Little believed had only been waiting for him to show up on spot to basically finish them off. Somehow he imagined himself as some sort of angel of mercy, divinely commissioned, if you will, to euthanize them. At least that's what he said some of the other times. The other times he believed he was the devil.
Talking with Samuel Little was chilling. He is a true monster in every sense of the word. He is every female's worst nightmare.
As the investigation currently now continues on Samuel Little, he sits in California State Prison in Los Angeles County, where he now has to use a wheelchair due to diabetes and a severe heart condition. If you'd like to write to him, you basically can by addressing that envelope to California State Prison, Los Angeles County, Inmates Housing, P.O. Box 4430, Lancaster, California 93539-4430. Inmate's name Samuel Little, CDCR number AV2258. So there you have it, the new serial killing reigning champion, Samuel Little, aka Sam Little. I'm sure you would agree with me that he can't die soon enough. So with that, I bid you a fair farewell, and I wish you and I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. Last but not least, I want you to always remember to lock your doors and windows, because you never know when it's going to be your 5 minutes that are up next. Peace.